today I am going to touch upon checkmating patterns, king and two bishops versus king, which is slightly more difficult. So I like to think of this as like the big three. If you're a Boston Celtics fan, you have Kevin Garnett, you have Paul Pierce, and you have Ray Allen, and you have your lonely king, let's just say here. So again, this is just completely set up randomly. In your ideal world, how do you have to set the position up in order to deliver checkmate for black? This is always the first question you should ask yourself, not only in any situation, but especially when in these technically won checkmating positions. You have to figure out the way, the picture that you want to end the game with. The king can't be somewhere in the middle of the chessboard, okay? The only way to deliver checkmate with king and two bishops versus king is if this king on g6 is in one of the four corners. Okay? So just think of it that way. It's a lot easier to remember. You have to push the king back into one of the corners to deliver checkmate. Okay? And once again, here is a really easy to follow step-by-step method to achieve this. So step number one again is do not deliver checks. With king and two bishops and king and bishop and a knight, one of the most important things, the first thing you should do, is advance your king as close to the opposing king as possible. Okay? Leave your pieces be, advance your king towards your opponent's king first. Okay? So using that strategy, king to c4 is an obvious move. King to d5. Okay, so now that your king is as close as possible to the opposing king, now you have to use your other two pieces to once again cut off the squares that the king wants to go to, and by doing so, push him towards one of the corners. Okay? So, in this position, for example, the king cannot go to e4, f4, or g4 because these squares are covered. So logically, you would be thinking then, okay, if they're already covered, I want to push him where? Well, back to this corner, h8. That will definitely be the easiest for you. Okay? So how do you think you should do this? Well, let me just show you really fast. If I were white in this position, I would start with bishop to g3. Why? Well, actually, excuse me, it's black's move first. Let's say it goes king to g5. Now bishop to g3. As you can see, all four crucial squares are now cut off for this king. So as you can see, we're kind of enclosing a nice little box around him. He's kind of confined by this rectangle right here, and he can't really do a whole lot. So let's say he waits, and you wait too. So you've built a nice little fortress, and again, it's just a very step-by-step, methodical way of pushing him back. Okay? And once you've achieved this fortress, again, you don't want to mess it up, so you leave it there and you just follow. Okay? Just follow his king and get as close as possible. So see how I'm maneuvering the white king? I'm not doing anything with these pieces. I'm just taking advantage of the fact that this king does not have many choices of where to go, and I'm just following him again, closing the noose around his neck, forcing him towards the corner of the board. Okay? So I'm just going to continue to do that until I can find a way to advance my other pieces and further cut off this king. So if you were white in this position, what move do you think you would play? Hopefully, you decided on bishop to f4. Okay? This move simply cuts off the king from going any more towards the opposite side of the board. And once again, these three advancing squares are completely covered. And honestly, once you have this, it's just a matter of time before you deliver checkmate. Bishop to e4, again, everything is just completely covered and there's not a thing that black can do about it in this position at all. So as hopefully this is becoming easier and easier for you to see how to do this. And if he tries to run away, for example, luckily for you, there's nothing to be afraid about at all. All you need to do is put your bishop on g5, and even if he's screaming to let him out in this position, there's absolutely nothing he can do. He cannot go out. All you do is just wait. It's just a very, very simple waiting game. You can, let's just say, even go, just for kicks, bishop to f6, for example. Maybe not even the best move. I'm just showing you, you really don't need to do anything. You're just waiting for him. Okay? King to f8, bishop to g6, for example. Okay? And you're just escorting him to this corner. There's nothing he can do. Of course, you have to be extremely careful in a position like this, for example, not to accidentally deliver stalemate, right? That would be highly unfortunate. But of course, unfortunately for black, there are very easy ways to avoid this for white. Okay? Seeing as how he only has 2 squares to go to, I want to continue to make the point that you can literally do whatever you want. Okay? If I were white, for example, I would just drop back to d4, for example, and advance my king closer. Because remember, you need your king close to your opponent's final resting place in order to deliver checkmate. Okay? And again, he can't go anywhere, so there's no issue here. King to f8, and now simply a move such as, again, there's absolutely no panic in this position, so why don't you just go, for example, bishop to b4, bishop to c5, further cutting off this king. He only has 1 square to go to, and let's see if you can discover the final pattern to checkmate the black king. Again, once you've cornered your opponent, take a little bit of time, don't rush things, and just in your head try and see how the final checkmate would look. Because once you have that picture in your mind, it's just a matter of figuring out the steps to get there. Okay, maybe you have an idea by now. Often it's easier just to bring your bishops to the middle of the board. This provides the most scope for them in case there's any difficulties whatsoever. And then you just advance your king. He has to go back to the corner. Now it's probably pretty evident that you want this position with checkmate, but of course you cannot go bishop to d5 right now because that's stalemate again. And if you check him, all of a sudden he has a potential escape square, so you don't want that. So how do you combat that problem? All it takes is one simple waiting move. So you just wait one move, wait for him to come back, and now you check. The king cannot go this way or anywhere else. He has to go back and mate. Okay? So do you see how that worked? Of course, there might be a faster way. If you put it on a computer, it might show, some faster way to manipulate the bishops and the king and whatnot. But who cares about that, okay? If you just follow this very simple technique and method, you will have absolutely no issues closing out these games. Okay? So once again, the principle with king and 2 bishops versus king is advance your king as close as possible to your opponent's, and then cut off the squares where the opponent's king wants to go.